Tally ho, my titanium baubles. It's Mansant, and this isn't the normal thing I do on the channel. I don't tend to jump the gun and give hot takes about sets that aren't even out yet. But, I was excited enough. I thought the hype was real enough about potentially new Brute cards that, sure, let's go ahead and give this Classic Battles Rhinar versus Dorinthea, kind of mini release, a review. Because I think at this point we have seen all the cards that are coming that are going to be new for Brute. And I also think at this point we know it's confirmed that they're also color locked in that, something like this dodge is only going to come in blue. And that also affects kind of the analysis of the power level of this stuff. So now that all the information is on the table, wanted to go ahead and kind of give an overview of where these cards work for Levia deck lists in particular, because, that's always the slant here on this channel. So with that, I'm actually a little hopeful, a little bit more hopeful than a lot of people are about this set. I agree, it's a little more disheartening than I would have liked to see that this is all we got. No blue 6, rest in peace. But there's still some things to go over. So with that, we're going to jump into the first card of the lineup here, and that is Bone Basher. And I'm actually way more excited about this one than should be allowed for how disappointing it actually is. But basically, to give you the rundown of this card, right? It is a 4-attack Brute weapon club, 2-handed, not 1-handed, that says once per turn action, 2-cost attack. Now, this is strictly worse than Romping Club. Romping Club at least has the option, whether you're using it intentionally or not, to provide +1 attack on itself if you've discarded a 6. Now, even if you're not using Romping Club for that effect, if you're presenting it to your opponent, they can assume that, oh, there's maybe some discard package in his build. If you take Bone Basher over Romping Club, you're just straight up telling your opponent, giving them free information that, no, you don't run any of the discard package. And you know what? That is something I will deal with, because I genuinely want to run Bone Basher over Romping Club for Club Levia, because I'm tired of calling it Club Levia. It sounds so boring. But now we can call it Bone Basher Levia, and that sounds sick. So you betcha I'm going to play this in cold foil straight out of the box in Bone Basher Levia. So you know what? That's a win. I'll take it. It's cool. It's funny. And it has a ring to it, right? But overall, it is just more of a meme card than anything. So I will have to slap it with that meme tag, unfortunately. But then we've got the next card here in Blossom of Spring. And Blossom of Spring, this is a chest piece that doesn't block, that says action, destroy Blossom of Spring to gain a resource, go again. Now, you're not going to run this in Blitz or Constructed. Obviously, the power level is way too low, because we have access to Husk or Tunic in those formats. But in Commoner, the issue with this card is that Heart & Cross-Strap is still legal, and Heart & Cross-Strap just fits more with what Levia is trying to do in Commoner, just be able to have really explosive go-wide turns. Heart & Cross-Strap discounting those kind of turns by 2 entire resources is really big. Gaining a resource has, some other intricacies that are different than just reducing the cost of your next attack, but it's just not something that you're going to run. If you can afford it anyway, you're going to try to run Barkbone Strapping, in that it has the block attached to it and then probably gives you like 1 resource. So that's already like an in-class version that's better than Blossom of Spring. So yeah, it's not something I'd run, but you know what? It is not completely a meme. There might be some deck out there in Commoner that was waiting for this card, so we'll just call it chaff for now. Now we've got an exciting one, though, like a legitimately exciting one, and that is Bone Vizier. Now, Bone Vizier is a new Brute headpiece that blocks 1 that says when Bone Vizier is destroyed, reveal the top card of your deck. If it has 6 or more attack, put it on top of your deck, otherwise put it on the bottom, and it has Blade Break. So obviously the play, right, is you block with it, get its effect off, peep the top, and then that information is going to lead into something in your hand that cares about drawing or discarding off the top. You wouldn't just use this if you're not playing into, a draw or discard effect, because why would you risk like opting a Blood Rush Bellows to the bottom, that kind of thing? Maybe you use it like last resort just to prevent lethal or something, but I think ideally you are using this card proactively to help the consistency of your draw discard cards. And that's really cool. Those cards are something in Brute that are legitimately like very powerful, but they have that downside of being non-blocks, like Pulping, Wild Ride, Shadow Blasphemous are the big ones, right? And the non-block means that there's just so much volatility in playing those cards in that, you want the payoff to always happen. They've got great hit effects, hit effects if they discard the 6, that when you don't hit, the game feels miserable because you've already put this subpar blocking card in your deck that you were forced to actually play out. It's the only thing you can do with it, and then it just didn't work. And that feels really bad. So Bone Vizier, kind of fixing that a little bit, is really exciting. I love this design space they're going for, and we actually have another card coming up that deals with it as well. So I still don't think you're going to run this in like constructed. Maybe in Blitz if you're going for like a super turbo aggro, like Wild Ride Pulping list that's just trying to end the game super quickly. Bone Vizier could help with that. But where it's really going to shine is this is just absolutely an all-star commoner card. It's better than Iron Rot, and I was running Iron Rot in some hit effect matchups anyway. So it's an upgrade in that regard. And it's probably now going to let you run cards like Wild Ride in Commoner, which were a little risky before because same deal. Like if you whiffed on that, your deck just like kind of fell apart. And Commoner, believe it or not, is at a power level where like you can't just have a bad turn. I mean, have you played against some of these Rune Blades in Commoner? It's a little unreal. So yeah, because of that, Bone Vizier, like legitimately good, and definitely going to play it in Commoner. Then we've got Chief Ruk'utan, and I freaking love the art on this guy. I mean, if this comes out in foil as like a calling participation or something, absolutely picking it up. This is a new Brute Mentor, 3 block. It has the whole like mentor mechanic where it has to be in your arsenal, then flip it up, start a turn. And it says when it's face up in arsenal, whenever you play a card with 6 or more intimidate, put a lesson counter on him, and then if there's 2 or more lesson counters, banish him, search your deck for an Alpha Rampage, put it face up in arsenal, then shuffle. So immediate issue, right, is that we can't run Alpha Rampage as Levia players. So we're not going to get that tutor effect out of it. But then again, the ability to intimidate could force some damage through. But if you start to think about, critically what Levia is doing with their arsenal, this card just sounds like worse and worse and worse. And that's because Levia is a deck that is very, very fragile, especially in constructing her power turns. She normally needs very specific combos like an Unworldly Swing Big or like Dread Screamer Graveling to have her big power turns, right? And taking up your arsenal slot with something like this that's just for purely like greedy damage push is going to make you just live off the top of the deck. And that is not something you want to do because then you're just adding more inconsistency to your play lines and removing decision making of actually setting up arsenal. So even though, yeah, on like a Dread Screamer Graveling turn, you could just intim 2 cards, immediately clear this thing out of your arsenal, push like an extra 6 damage in theory, it's still limiting enough that I don't think it's worth it. Of course, it's also a mentor, so against like Wizard, it's a little bit rough, a little too slow. So unfortunately, yeah, not too excited about this for Levia in particular, but it's not a total meme. I could see this being in Rhinar decks for sure, so we'll just mark it as chaff for us. Now, next card here, Wrecking Ball. This one was spoiled a little bit early in that like teaser video that came out. It is a red 3-cost, 6-attack, non-block, brute action attack that says when you attack with Wrecking Ball, draw a card, then discard a random card. If a card with 6 or more attack is discarded this way, intimidate. Now, this card is just, unfortunately, not worth putting the non-block in your deck. It doesn't have anything really special for like what Levia is looking for in these early aggressive cards that can draw and discard and like actually have good enough payoff to make it worth it, like Pulping, Wild Ride, even Shadow Blasphemous. Wrecking Ball just gives you the Intimidate. And obviously paired with Rhinar, that's more powerful because they're going to get the Intimidate anyway because of his hero ability. So with Rhinar, it looks maybe juicier in that it's, if it hits, that's double Intimidate. All you needed to do was stack like 1 barraging before that, and now you have a lot of damage coming through pretty much unmarred. But for Levia, it's not worth the non-block. Not good enough. Yeah, just the pitch as well just doesn't let it fit into any kind of cool cost curves for you. So for us, it is chaff. Now we've got Beast Mode. Beast Mode's a bit more exciting. So it is a red 3-cost, 6-attack, 3 block as well, brute action, that says if you have intimidated this turn, beast mode gains +2. Now, this card I'm legitimately excited for. Definitely disregarded it at first, but if you are playing this in the more controlling style of now Bone Basher Levia, this is the kind of card where at the very end, if you stack these other intimidate effects, like your high rollers, your barraging beatdowns, all these 0 costs that go alongside with the fact that this costs 3 anyway, to then play out beast mode off of like 1 blue, like the 2 intimidates previous, this just deals extra damage, just becomes a good rate card. And any other point in the game, it's at least still a 3 block. So I think it's fine. I don't know if it actually like makes it in the Bone Basher Levia list. The lists are honestly getting like more refined and pretty tight, but it is interesting. It is a card you can run, and I like the rate on it, right? And I'm just so thankful that it's at least a 3 block. So there's that, right? Can't call it a meme because it's got some viability. It's also a rare, so it can't be played in commoner anyway. So we'll go ahead, slap a constructed label on that. We'll see what we can do with it. But this card is the exciting one. Pack Call, yellow, 3 cost, 6 attack, 3 block brute action that says when you defend with Pack Call, reveal the top card of your deck. If it has 6 or more attack, put it on top, otherwise put it on the bottom. So this is the effect we saw on Bone Vizier, right? But Pack Call checks a lot more boxes that Levia in particular was looking for. So we do quite enjoy more 3 blocks in the deck. We don't like running the non-blocks, so that's already a plus, right? It is a 6 power, so it's got synergy there. It's also a 6 power card that like you're incentivized to block with, which is also great because sometimes there were cards in your deck that, yeah, I mean, you could block with your Endless Maws, your Dread Screamers, you need to fill graveyard, but man, did it hurt when those are your good cards and you just know that you're not playing with 3 of them in your deck anymore. Sometimes blocking with something like a Beast Within just felt great. Like, okay, good, that was a card that, you know, if it wasn't discarded, it was like useless anyway. So it's not like there's a lot of those slots you can really put towards cards like this in the Levia, like aggressive Levia list, but Pack Call can definitely make the cut, I think. And that's really because of the other payoff in that this effect of peeping the top can make cards like Wild Ride, Pulping, and Shadow of Blasphemfet way more consistent. Because they definitely had the issue, I might have mentioned this with Bone Vizier as well, in that the cards became riskier to play as the game went on. I mean, you see a Shadow of Blasphemfet turn like 1 or 2, you're balling, because now you basically gave yourself +1 intellect, you don't really care about not turning off Blood Debt by banishing like a Howl, because your Blood Debt wasn't even high. But it was mid-game where all of a sudden you're at like 5-6 Blood Debt, you know, these significant chunks of damage, and you drew a Shadow of Blasphemfet, and you're like, oh god, like I don't want to use this card as my only like way to turn off Blood Debt because it's random, unfortunately. And that just like really, really hurt those mid-game plays. You started to just hate that card because it's a non-block, so you're basically forced to play it out or discard it to like Art of War, banish it with Art of War, or discard it with Blood Rush, which that always felt fine at least. But now with Pack Call, you have opportunities now to maybe set up Shadow Blasphemfet in Arsenal, wait till you found the Pack Call block with it, and now you've got a bit more information about whether or not the Shadow line is going to hit or not. Because, right, this doesn't like guarantee it. If it was a miss and you bottom it, then the next card is not necessarily a hit either, but at least helps, right? So I think this card's fine. I really want to put it in. I'm not sure what immediately gets cut out of lists. Like, honestly, with Levia, like another yellow isn't what she needed. If this was like blue, of course, that's great. But the yellow slots like tend to just kind of be junk. So this does end up kind of in that junk-ish role, but at least it does something that we haven't seen before in the deck, and that is adding consistency to the draw discard package. And at least give you more of a reason to even run those cards to begin with. So yeah, this card's totally fine. Definitely want to see what it feels like on the table more than just talk about it, because maybe it just like ends up being garbage, but maybe there's those turns where you block with Pack Call and like bottom a non-6, block with another Pack Call, bottom another non-6, and then like you play your Shadow Blasphemfet, it hits like the Beast Within, like your turn goes nuts, and it was only possible because of like the Pack Call blocks. I mean, that's gonna happen. That's gonna feel pretty cool. But then we've got the next card here. Sorry for the ramble. And that is Clearing Bellow. So this is another blue 0 cost, 3 block, brute action. It is a rare though, just a note. And all it says is intimidate, go again. So this is just strictly worse than high roller for one, strictly worse than barraging beatdown for another. But if you were just trying to stack nothing but late game blues to intimidate, then this is like, it's fine. I mean, the fact that it costs 0 over kind of the more fringe one in like Blue Awakening Bellow that some people were running is kind of an upside, because now you can like play through, say you had a Frostbite and yet you were trying to play your full Intim hand, but Awakening Bellow was getting in the way. Well, because it costs 1, well, now there's at least like another 0 to play. So it's okay. I mean, it being a rare means we can't look at it for commoner where it like maybe had more room in like a slower build. But for the most part, we're just gonna slap the constructed label, because you know what? It might end up in like the slow club, sorry, not club, Bone Basher list, but I'm not like overly excited about it. Now, this card, Muscle Mutt, hugely disappointing. When I saw those blurry pictures at first, I thought it said Muscle Mass and thought it was some brute card, like for whatever reason. But no, it is Muscle Mutt, kind of strange art, generic action, 6 attack, 2 block, 3 cost yellow, that just has no reason to ever be in your deck. Not only does it not even have like flavor text to make it interesting, it is just strictly worse than Raging Onslaught, right? Raging Onslaught has 3 block and it's got flavor text at all the same stats otherwise in yellow. So no, this card is wildly unplayable and is definitely just a meme. Then we've got some of the stuff from the Dorinthea kit actually, but the Dorinthea kit, because of commoner in particular, and I do still swear by Talishar Levia, there are some cards that we should look at just in case they do find their way into those deck lists because of the sword capabilities, synergies that they might have. Now, the first one, unfortunately, isn't all that exciting. It is Thrust. Now, Thrust is a red 1 cost, 2 defense, generic attack reaction that says target sword attack gains +3. Now, this is obviously just strictly worse than Razor Reflex, because Razor Reflex at all those same stats can at least target 1 or 0 cost attacks to potentially give them go again if they hit, right? And that's what we were running Razor Reflex for in Talishar Levia. Razor Reflex can hit like Ghostly Visits, Graveling Growls, Boneyard Marauders. Then it has that like kind of follow-up synergy in maybe you can target Talishar with it early game to be cheeky with damage, or late game to potentially close the game out of nowhere. And that's why it was good. It's got more flexibility in use. Thrust doesn't have flexibility, not that exciting anyway. And maybe if it had like 3 block, it'd be fine because it at least would do something a bit different. But no, you just don't put this in the list. Not good enough. That said, like maybe there's decks out there that were really looking for more of that effect. So we're just gonna slap it with a chaff label and pretend that someone uses it someday. But then we've got the exciting one. This one's actually kind of big, I think, and that is On a Knife Edge, yellow 0 cost, generic action, 2 block. And it says your next sword attack this turn gains go again. Go again. So this card actually kind of does what Talishar Levia was missing, and that is give you a way to use Talishar mid-game. Because as of now, the way you end up playing with like Talishar Levia is you only swing it turn like 1 or 2 if you were forced to block out really heavily by your opponent. You can at least just like pitch, swing back weapon for 4, and that's fine. Or you used it really late game to either close with Razor Reflex Talishar, or because you were able to keep a large hand and have like a really go wide turn of, Dread Screamer, Hooves, Lead the Charge, whatever it was, and you just happened to throw Talishar in there as well. Those were pretty much the only times Talishar really got swung. I doubt it even really got swung 3 times in most games. I think maybe 1 or 2 is the norm for sure. But On a Knife Edge does give you the ability now to say, okay, my cost curve fits. I'm going to play On a Knife Edge into Blue Pitch Talishar into Ghostly Visit early game for 4 off of 2 cards. Great rate, right? Or, off of Boneyard Marauder coming in as that last attack. Another, 3 cards now for 10. A little bit above rate. That's fine. So I think like giving Talishar Go Again is unique enough, right, that it wasn't able to be done before this card in Talishar Levia, that I think experimenting with this card is going to do us some good. I'm definitely interested in seeing if it ends up slotting in, because it's definitely got some clunk to it, and that it's a yellow 2-block. But, there's things to explore. So we'll slap it with that commoner label and get back to it on another day. Then we've got some more just sword chaff. Sorry, spoiling it. It's chaff, that's for sure. Visit the Blacksmith, 0 cost, blue, generic action 2-block. That says your next sword attack this turn gains +1. Just no reason to play this. Really bad rate. If you're looking for this kind of like +1, breakpoint modifier in Commoner Levia, you would just run like Come to Fight blue, because it blocks 3. The +1 applies to anything. Yes, it costs 1, but whatever, the cost curve is fine. This is just not what Talishar Levia cares about at all. But it said sword, so I wanted to look at it anyway. But yeah, that's just going to be chaff. Then we've got Blade Flash. Blade Flash, blue, 1 cost, generic attack reaction 2-block that says target sword attack gains go again. Now, this one is just not checking those same boxes that On Knife's Edge was, and that's because this one costs something, and that makes it really awkward to play with Talishar. Because Talishar costs 2 base, but that 1 floating can actually go to quite a bit in Levia. If you spend that 1 floating on Blade Flash, that means you had to keep like a whole nother 2 cards to pull off some other play, and that's not worth it anymore. Also being tricky with like Go Again off the back of a Talishar swing isn't the biggest deal. It doesn't really give us more information, like it doesn't give us more room to play really by being cheeky about it, because we just want to throw more raw damage at our opponent more efficiently, and this card just not being efficient is the big issue there. So Blade Flash, just chaff for our Commoner Levia decks, unfortunately. Then we've got kind of more of the same, honestly. So this is Dodge. It is a blue 0 cost defense reaction that blocks 2 with no flavor text. Now, as far as we know now, still, these do not come in other colors like I mentioned at the beginning, and that is the big problem. If Dodge did scale up to yellow and red, then we'd be looking at a third 0 cost 4-block defense reaction in red, and that would have been really good. I mean, for like Club Levia, absolutely would have loved slotting that in, even with no text. It's just good value. But nope, this one's locked at blue, and just has no reason to be played. I mean, you've got Sync Blows and Fate Foreseens at the same cost that actually have effects. So yeah, there's just no reason to actually put this card in the deck. 'Tis a meme. Then we've got Toughen Up. Now, Toughen Up's at least a bit more unique, I guess, in that it is a blue 2 cost defense reaction that blocks 4. So we haven't seen this stat line before yet on a generic card with this pitch. There was like Rise Above, which was red 2 cost 4 that had the option to put a card on top if you really wanted to play it as an alternative cost. But Toughen Up, not really hitting boxes for me for any Levia builds. If we were pitching in for a defense reaction, we'd want to get really good rate out of that defense. And for Levia, we just, are going to be playing like Unmovables or even Guardian of the Shadow Realm if we want to make our like pitching on defense as efficient as possible. Toughen Up's just not a good rate for that. It's interesting in that it's at least a blue, so maybe late game the ability to find these defense reactions is more potent, just because you've pitched them back into your deck. And sure, that's a thing. Like if you're really trying to play around late game pummel, actually, okay, here's a line. You're trying to play against a deck that runs heavy pummels, like Bone Basher Levia. You run Toughen Up, you pitch them back into your deck so that late game, when the Bone Basher Levia plays out their pummel card, you can now respond, paying for Toughen Up, not even having to discard a card anymore because your hand's probably gone. You blocked 2 on the initial swing, and you saved your life. So there you go. That's the edge case for Toughen Up. I don't really see that coming up again, but because of that, we'll put it as chaff, not like an absolute meme. But then we've got this beautiful card, Titanium Bauble. So this card I do predict to be kind of like the new meme in deck lists that are just, pretty happy at like 79 cards. The person was like, I just don't really think I need this last slot. So they go ahead and just slot in a Titanium Bauble and get all their friends to sign it at whatever tournament they're going to. That sounds pretty fun. I like that, they've given us a blank text box so we can fit in all those signatures. But that's really all this card is going to be used for. It doesn't even have like the gem tag on the bottom just to be fun, if that ever mattered. No, well, because it still blocks 3, I guess, so that's different. But yeah, this card, it's just a meme, but I love it. I really like that it's in the game because I think we'll see some funny things to come of it. But there we go. That is the total rundown of what could potentially affect Levia coming out of this set. I know it's not what we all wanted, namely because there's no blue 6, unfortunately, but there's still some cool things to start looking at. I mean, there's 2 new commoner cards that we can start looking at building around. There's new constructed playables that are fine, and at least one that adds like truly new depth to deck building. And then the real standout, like I mentioned, good God, I love Bone Basher. I cannot wait to play some Bone Basher Levia. So that's been it. I just wanted to push this out real quick, and hope you all enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next one.